Hello, hello. I see that you're on mute, which is always a good sign that you figured it out. Hi. Oh my
I
goodness, you're
did.
so handsome.
Oh, thank you so much.
Beautiful. You're so much younger than I expected with your accolades and everything.
Oh, well, thank you then. I'm glad. I guess that's a
That's a
good thing.
compliment. Coming from
Thank
me.
you.
Yeah, coming from me, that's a big compliment. Youth is all I desire these days
Now,
because it's
tell me
fleeting
about it.
like crazy. Well, why don't we go ahead and get kicked off and let the audience know who you are? So I'm going to start off with the three questions I ask every single podcast guest, which are: Hi, who are you? How do we know each other? And where can people find you online?
All right. So, my name is Olaolu Ogunyemi, also known as Lou. I'm from Ruston, Louisiana. Proud husband, father, U.S. Marine author, U.S. Marine officer, and an author. Have three children's books. I've written and published leadership articles and military articles, things of that nature. Um, I'm a proud graduate of Grambling State University and a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the best. And I'm very excited to be here with you today. So, really met you through your online presence. Loved your vibes, loved your energy. And so, I'm very honored to be here. So, thank you so much.
No, thank you. I don't remember exactly how we connected, but I remember when I went to your profile, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is awesome. Well, I thought you were awesome until you said that you were a
So,
Grambling
yeah,
fan.
it is what it is.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm really, really excited and I had to give you a little bit of a hard time. I love college football. Like that is we could go on a whole tangent about that. I've had the opportunity to work with like over 10 college teams in the US, all D1 and I love college football so much. But what I wanted to talk to you about today because yeah, like I came across your LinkedIn and you have this incredible drive to inspire others and your online voice is so contagious. And I would imagine that with having so many dreams, like writing and your service in the Marine Corps, thank you so very much for your service. I know that's like always really awkward to say, but I have to say it because I'm so, so grateful. You're a part of the reason why this is the greatest nation. And your passion for real estate and of course fatherhood, which you touched upon. I'm wondering how does someone with so much going on find a way to avoid burnout so they can continue being ambitious and following their pursuits because I know a lot of us, myself included, in this current season just get a little burnt out and spread too thin. And I'm wondering how you find the space to be so authentic and show up as your authentic self both online and then in your professional pursuits.
Absolutely. So, one thing I do is I steal from Dave Ramsey in the finance world, where he talks about budgeting, $0 or zero base budgeting. That means every single penny you're supposed to budget, right? So, I do the same thing with time. And I go through and say, okay, here's the time I have for today. I know I'm not going to get any more. I can definitely use it non efficiently and have a lot less things get done. But the way I look at it is you got to budget your time the same way you budget your money if you want to be successful. So I start by prioritizing my day. I have the same habits that go on, and then I prioritize the things that I believe are important. And then the rest of them, I sort of let go. There's a lot of things that I just have to put on the back burner. I just don't do it all. And I want to point out that there are many things that I think socially, if I were to rank myself and some of the things that I used to do socially, especially in college as a member of the greatest fraternity again, some of the things I used to do socially I just don't do anymore. I don't have the time to do, and I gave it up freely, knowing that I could prioritize some other things. And I think really to answer your other question about burnout and being authentic, one thing that I found interesting is with all the many hats, there comes sometimes many masks. So I think really for me as I go out and trying to maintain the authenticity is really finding those people that, which for me are my siblings, my brothers. We grew up really close. My sisters, we all grew up really close. So finding those people you can just reach out to and just be your authentic self, no matter what the conversation is, no matter what time of day or night. We reach out to each other and we just talk. We just talk. We sort of share that moment with each other. So that way, no matter what I've gone throughout the day, I can just share that moment with them. So that way, I'm not breaking whatever mold or society thinks I'm supposed to be as a Marine officer or as a children's book writer when I'm engaging with children. I'm not breaking that mold. I'm going back and enjoying that space with my family.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that you're a Marine Corps officer because I am the proud military brat daughter of a Marine Corps officer as well. And when I hear you speak, I hear a lot of parallels between how my dad speaks, and I can imagine, I don't know, but I can imagine that for your children or one, do you have one more than one?
I have three.
Three. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. You were such a baby to have 3 kids, holy cow. But I can imagine whether it's happening and you realize it or not, that sometimes having a parent that's super inspirational is amazing, but, like, whew, it could be exhausting where you're like, "All right, I don't need another quote by Gordon Ramsay, Dad. Just let me brush my teeth in peace." And my dad is my superhero, and I attribute a lot of the discipline and various success tactics that I have gleaned from him and his time serving in the U.S. military. And so I'm wondering, are there any values that you gained and attribute to your time serving the U.S. Marine Corps?
Absolutely. First of all, simplify to your dad. That's really awesome. Absolutely love the Marine Corps. I love really the Marines that are in there. And I think one thing that I've gathered from the Marine Corps is that we have our three core values: honor, courage, commitment. What I really love about that is the commitment that everybody has to those values. And really, it's the idea that you should be contributing to something that's bigger than yourself. And I think that's what keeps us together. That's what keeps us bonded as an organization. And really, to be honest with you, that's something that my parents sort of instilled in us at a young age. My dad, in an environment where not many fathers may have stuck around, my dad was the epitome of an example of what it should be. So when you talk about quotes and lectures, listen, sometimes I hear myself talking, and it's not necessarily the Marine that I hear; it's my dad. I hear he talks in this real small tone, this small voice, and when I hear that, and I'm like, all right, let me stop. You're right. Yeah, you're trying to brush your teeth, or you're trying to do something else. But there's sometimes I'm like, well, I have to give them this really important thing in my mind, and this analogy is really going to sync with them. And to be honest with you, it never does. Complete misfire every time. But it's to me, it's like you're there, you're trying, and that's all you can give. You do your best, and I think again, that's tying back to your question. Those are some of the things that the Marine Corps has taught you that when you face a challenge, no matter what it is, no matter how hard it may seem, you have the ability to push through that challenge just because you know somebody else is going through it. All you have to do is connect with those other people and work your way through it.
I like that you said that this theme of turning pain into purpose and facing your challenges head on and really facing failure, because I think ultimately the reason why we're so afraid of pain and we're so afraid of we're afraid of pain because of failure, we're afraid of failure because of pain, whichever it is, right? And I know that in the Marine Corps they'll say pain is weakness leaving the body. I don't know if you've heard that before. I could see it in your smile. You probably have. But when we look at pain and what you just touched upon, shared pain, I had a conversation last night with a girlfriend about something private I'm going through. I have not even hinted about it in a public forum until this exact moment, and I'm certainly not going to touch upon it until I'm ready. But one of the issues that I'm struggling in this season with something that I am going through right now is that I don't have anyone to speak to about it that can say, "Hey, Ella, I've been there. It doesn't look exactly like yours, but I've experienced this as well. And this is how I handled it. These are the mistakes I made." You know, kind of a coach, right? I'm just so big on finding a coach for whatever you're trying to accomplish. And as I'm trying to figure out this situation of mine, I'm just struggling because I don't have really anywhere to turn to, someone who could say, "Ella, I know how that feels." And I'm wondering, when you say that you go through pain and you're finding someone with whom you can share your pain and your fears and your mistakes and whatever it might be, whether it's someone who's gone through it and is on the other side of it, or they're actually walking through it with you, how are you reaching out for those people? And can you give me an example of what type of painful situation you were able to find a community that can support you and share in that season of your life?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I can tell you that you're definitely not in that struggle alone. I have been there many a times, and So first, I think the biggest thing for me is letting down that guard, because there's a natural guard that comes with, I think, with just being strong personalities, just strong human beings. It's like, well, we have to be able to work our way through this, and we have to have control of the situation. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me that I've learned over the years, is that I can't control every single situation. I'll give one example. My son, he's a 10-year-old. He plays football now and all those kind of things. But at one point, one of the most painful moments in my life, he was 3 years old. He's at daycare, and I come in from work a little bit earlier than normal. And my wife calls me, and she's distraught. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm asking, trying to be calm, what's going on. And then she couldn't get it out. So I'm like, okay, tell me where you are. I'm on the way, because I just assumed she had a car accident. Then she finally says they can't wake him up. I'm like, you can't wake who up? She's like, your son. It's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean they can't wake him up? Where is he right now? And he happened to be at the preschool, and I rushed down the street to the preschool, and he was having his first of several seizures that he was having. And I remember walking in, and the only thing that I could think of is, all right, you got to take control of the situation. You got to do this, 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 and that. And I just really, I guess, the training and the education and the calmness sort of overtook me in that moment. And I remember just sort of clinching up in the ambulance. They wouldn't let me ride in the back because it's all uncertain and all these kind of things. And then fast forward, it happened a couple more times, and then you go to the neurologist. And one thing that I hated about it is being a neurologist, and they're telling me, well, we don't know what's going on. But we're going to give his medication. Every time we went back, they just increased medication, not knowing the root cause or anything like that. And so it was really, I think the painful part for me wasn't necessarily just going through, or just trying to understand how parents were getting through. It was the fact that I could not control that situation. There was, out of all the things that I could have that have happened to me in life, whether it be me almost failing out of officer candidate school, which is a little known fact about me, or whether it be other things that have happened in my life, many of those I had control over. If I just work out harder, if I just read more, if I just study more, or whatever it may be, I can overcome this obstacle. And I think one of the hardest things for me in that moment was just letting go. And in that moment, my brother, who was one of my nieces, was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. He was able to call me and walk me through that scenario, that situation, and say, "Hey, man, listen, I I have never had to sit there and watch my son with a seizure, or watch my daughter in this certain situation, but I can help you through this. At least at the time he hadn't, but I can help you through this. Listen, just whatever you need, just talk to me." And I was at least able to get that stress off my chest, because really, the biggest thing, the most painful thing to me was the fact that I had no control, and the fact that I felt like I couldn't really express my situation to anybody, because I had to be the strong one. I had to be the one, no matter what's happening in the family. I have to be the one to hold everybody together. At least that's what I felt my role was. So I'll encourage you by saying, to me, I believe that so a lot of us feel like we have to take that burden on ourselves and really carry it. But in all actuality, uh, you're not alone. You have people to talk to, and just to me, the best thing is being able to just relinquish control. We may not understand, and people may not understand exactly where you're coming from, but at least we can be with you, join arms, and walk through it together.
That's really, really beautiful. I have a rule in this podcast, and my guests are not allowed to make me cry. You're about to break that rule a little bit, because hearing you talk about seeing your son in such an awful state, awful meaning just the lack of control, right? That's what kept repeating in my head as I'm hearing you talk, just like that complete lack of control as a parent. And boy, is that the theme of parenthood. You learn that real quick. You learn that from birth. You are not in control. And you will surrender whether you like it or not. And I think that it you were touching upon something so beautiful. So I first want to say that I'm so grateful that you, your brother, and your children are here and happy and healthy. Like, I want to honor that, and it shines through you, and I'm so grateful. And I see the beauty in the fact that while the conditions of your children and the circumstances of your children and the family dynamics of what your partnerships with your spouses or whatever it might be could be different, that you're able to share and bond through sharing and being vulnerable. I will say and I'm not willing to talk about it, but my circumstance is something very unusual. And I where I'm trying to find peace is that I know that I'm not the first. Feels like I'm the first. I'm not the first, but I know I'm not the last. And so I'm just trusting that God is somewhat preparing me to be able to walk and guide another person who's going through it down the line. That's where I'm trying to find the purpose in this season, but it has just been difficult because while I'm open to speaking with a select few people in my life about it, their advice pisses me off because they just seem so out of touch. I'm like, you don't understand. And I will say a big piece of it is the lack of control. That theme of not having control and really having to, as you touched upon, like where you weren't allowed in the ambulance. Ironically, again, it's not the same, but the parallels of what you're talking about of you are being forced to act in a way that goes against your nature because someone else somewhere decided that this is how things are being done and you're new to this game and you have to follow that. That resonates with what I'm going through right now because my lack of control, my lack of experience, my lack of education, my lack of wherewithal in this season of what I'm experiencing is just overwhelming. And then I also have to be careful that I'm not drinking out of the water hose and getting information, guidance, advice from the wrong directives either, which is why I always want to find someone who's been successful at whatever I'm trying to do so I could just kind of emulate and somewhat have something to look for. And I just don't have that in my life right now. But I know that one day when because I always am, I'm always willing to share when I'm ready to share. So one day, and I don't think it'll be anytime soon. I think it's going to be a minute when I'm ready to share and talk about this. I hope to do that, to be able to shine light for somebody else who really really feels isolated in this, and I hope to be able to have a sunny, bright, happy ending to add to it too, God willing. Right? That's also what I'm hoping. But I hear a lot of just like when you say the loss of control and that being forced to surrender and just imagining what both you and your brother have had to go to, I do believe that no matter how big the pain is, no matter how big the problem is, the purpose in it, even if we can't see it in the season, even if it takes the end of the road and all of that, the purpose is always so much greater than the amount of pain. And I would even say that if the pain is that big, it's because the purpose is that much bigger. And if the loss and the pain is that big, it's because the love was that much bigger. And so I'm just so glad that you were able to kind of touch me. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but just even just inspiring me, I really, really appreciate that. I think that when we think about loss in various ways, not looking at parenthood, just in general, right? You're on all of these amazing pursuits. Are these your three books that I'm looking at you behind your head?
There are. Those are my three children's books, correct?
Oh my gosh, I love that. It's so amazing. Um, I, I want to talk a little bit about fear of failure because I will say I recently published a book, and one of the unexpected consequences of writing this book was that the many, many children in my life, I have several children in my life that I love, no children myself, but there are a handful of children that I love very, very deeply. And they were so devastated that I wrote this memoir. It was a business memoir about my career in alcohol marketing. So very adult subject matter. Um, not adult like rated X, but just adult in the nature of alcohol and marketing. And it's got videos of these children, separate, not related, okay? But somehow they have this universal narcissism of flipping through the book and then throwing a fit because they're nowhere mentioned in the book. This happened among the children. And Auntie Ella wrote a book and I'm not in it. The audacity. Like I'm like, "Oh my gosh, these we are born just pure narcissists and truly think the entire world began when we did, right?" And then we have
Yep.
to work to unravel that. But I because of this, I have started publishing only one per child, but I've been writing and publishing children's books specific to the children to compensate for the pain and trauma that I caused these children by writing a book that's not about them. And it has been really, really fun. But I will say, having published a book, right? These are books that I'm giving to the child, and I know the audience, and I know this child's going to like it because it's tailored to them. I am so afraid of the idea of like ever publicly publishing them because I
Mm.
have this fear of failure. I have this fear of someone saying, well, why the heck would this woman with no kids be writing a children's book? And what does she know? And that's not age appropriate, or that's too young, or that vocabulary. I can't fathom it. And I want to talk a little bit about, how the fear of failure can keep us from our pursuits and perhaps even amputate our desires because we're so paralyzed by the fear of failing and the fatality that might come afterwards that we stop working on it. And how do you overcome that to create your books and to create your business and do everything that you're doing?
I think part of that is stuff. That's a great question, first of all. I think the first thing that I learned is really in my adult life. In the Marine Corps, I jumped in a pool, right? And the idea that you climb up to this high dive and you just jump off, to me, didn't occur to me until I was halfway almost in the water. And I was like, oh, I've never even jumped off a diving board. And then splash. And I thought about it. I was like, if I could turn off my brain to do stuff that I've never tried before, to include escaping for in our helo training, where I'm like, oh, they're going to just turn us upside down and we have to find a way to get out. All these weird things that we have to do in the Marine Corps just to get ready for our job and our deployment. I started thinking, it's like, well, what can truly equate to hurting me when it comes to failure? And in reality, it's really nothing. I mean, I think I had to stop worrying about allowing people's words or their opinions of what I do or what I produce to validate my efforts. So one thing I did say, like obviously, I have one of my second book up there received a 1-star review, and I almost fell out of my chair when I saw that. I was like, first of all, how in the world does somebody sit down and give you a 1-star review for a children's book? What could I possibly have put in that book that was that bad? And to be honest with you, I almost pulled it from the shelf because I had already started off with all these thoughts. Okay, well, here first of all, you're a black male. You already don't fit in the industry. You're a United States Marine. Since when does a United States Marine walk in the classroom and start reading the children that he wrote? What does that even mean to people? Right. And there's a lot of different things I kept unqualifying or disqualifying myself from being an author or for even engaging with children. And then I thought about it one day. I was like, dude, you've loved children your entire life. Like every last bit of your volunteer work has been geared towards helping children and inspiring children. How in the world are you going to now stop at this one goal and say, well, I can't do it anymore because I got a one-star review. And so I did temporarily pull it from the shelf. And I went back and edited. I said, let me refine a little bit because there are some things I could learn, and I did learn from that 1-star review. It's like, okay, there's some things we can refine. I worked with Josh, my brother, who's the illustrator, and we refined it just a little bit of the rhythm and a little bit of flow, and then re-released it. And within a week, I had a bulk order of 100 books for this anti-bullying campaign. And it almost made me fall on my chair again because here I am thinking, well, here we go. I'm going to re-release this thing, and I'm about to get slammed by another 1-star review. And here comes this guy out of nowhere, asking for a bulk order. And I started thinking, okay, well, that means that if I would have kept that to myself and said, you know what, it probably not going to help anybody anyway. It's a 1-star. I know for a fact that however many people that he's taken that book and blessed with, they would have never received the message that I was trying to convey through the book. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Long way of saying the biggest thing that I do to overcome my fear of failure is to realize there's somebody else on the other end that may need that message. They may need that interaction. Yesterday, I was blessed to have the opportunity to read at my son's school, and I never know what impact that's going to make on my son in the future. Other than him wanting to write books when he grows up, what impact that makes on him when he's with his friends and as they're having those interactions, they're like, "Oh man, your dad writes books, man. Maybe I can write a book." And it's just that small chance that at least one person can be inspired by it that it really inspires me and says, you know what? Okay, I may fail. So what? So I may launch a book and everybody hates it. if there's one child that picks it up and chuckles at it, or one child that picks it up and says, you know what, I really enjoy this theme, I really love this, or really one parent or teacher or mentor that sits down with that child and reads the book, which is really what all my books are about. If there's at least one that sits down with them, man, that really, to me, that really, they hit the goal, and I don't have to worry about anything else. And again, that's really what I do to overcome my fears. That one chance that I'll get to help somebody else out, I think it's worth it.
Oh, I love that. You're such a beautiful speaker, which it's no
Thank you.
surprise. I really do love I love that so much. And again, your desire to inspire and really shape, right, the minds of the future is just so important and needed. More I would say more than ever, just because there's so much content that children can consume. And if we can actively create content that inspires and educates and informs children on how to be prepared for the real world, right? There's this amazing book written, like Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. I think some of the lessons that we as adults need to remember, we learned at a young age and we start to forget them. Just the little
Hmm.
things like be nice, say you're sorry,
Hmm.
forgive, these basic lessons almost get lost and watered down. And so to be able to take these amazing values and put them in a way that inspires children is incredible. I want to talk a little bit about what you were like as a child. So your name, Olaolu, did I say that correctly?
You did.
I feel like I did. Okay, perfect. I thought so. I was like, I heard you say it. I was like, okay. One thing I like is your name Nigerian, or is it's
It
of
is
Nigerian
Nigerian.
descent?
That's correct. My
Wonderful.
dad came from Nigeria.
So, oh, okay, wonderful. One thing I love about African names, and I would say this is African names and Hawaiian names, is that they are pronounced exactly how they look, and yet we Americans somehow find a way to mess it up anyway. Like we just like look at the name and go "Brrr," and we just like make up our own enunciations along the way. So I'm looking at your name and I'm like, okay, Alalu is obvious, and yet I'm still like second guessing myself. And I feel like it's very similar with Hawaiian names. But did you start going by Lou when you were a child? Like were you little Lou, or did you kind of pick that up later on?
Oh, that was as a child, and only behind my dad's back too, because he would not allow me to use nicknames. He said, "Your name is Olaolu. That's how you pronounce it, every single letter, and it's not Lou. It's nothing or Big Lou, as I wanted to be called when I was a little younger. It's none of that. Like you pronounce your full name." So that definitely was something that I learned. I picked up over the years.
Are there any lingering habits or mindsets from your childhood that you're still working through today? Like as you create, these wonderful books, are you drawing from your own personal limitations that maybe you dealt with as a child, or maybe you still that still resonate with you today, and that kind of help you empower that little Lou, I want to call him. I can't imagine you being little, but little Lou, on the inside, because I'm all about reparenting and constantly being in conversation with our inner child, and I want to talk a little bit about that, just because you have created this amazing avenue for children's literature.
Absolutely. So, really, in two of my books, so Crow from the Shadow, which is my first book, the story or the theme behind that is never allow anyone or anything to stop you from being what you're meant to be. And throughout the story, there's this shadow that's really just trying to prevent Crow from being successful, from being a basketball player or a musician or a Marine or whatever he dreamed of. The shadow was there to block it. And really, the message I was conveying in that story is no matter who you are or where you're from, you have the ability to achieve success, to control your own fate. And I got that for my own self, right? So what I did is, as a young child, I was extremely insecure. So I was overweight, as you already alluded to. My name, Olaolu Ogunyemi, is not the most common name in Ruston, Louisiana, right? So a couple of things really just to highlight me, and really I just wanted to sort of blend in the background. I wanted to hide out. I was going to be a photographer in my mind. And the only reason I wanted to be a photographer is not because I was actually good at it, it was because I could stand behind the camera and take pictures. And really, it's funny because I saw a picture of myself or video, and I saw myself like having the camera right in my face, over my mouth and everything, because my gap was too big. I was too overweight, and all these kind of things. And so when you talk about the things from my past that really influenced the book, that really influenced me now, you talk about that insecurity is really what I had growing up. It's probably the best way to describe it. And I wish I could tell you it was a clean break. And I wish I could tell all the listeners out there it was just a clean break. I grew up and I became this real confident guy. And I could say, can't nobody tell me nothing, all that kind of stuff. Although I do feel like that most days. It wasn't just a clean break. It was things that I remember hearing as a child. That every sometimes those things may resonate and come back and say, man, you know what? This guy, you pretend to be this, and that's what I think. I think that's when the imposter syndrome and things of that nature come to the forefront in my mind. Uh, but what I think works for me is I immediately go back and look at myself in the mirror, and I started using positive self talk every single day. When I wake up, I tell myself, "Hey, dude, you look good, dog." Like I'm like, "Oh, you sure do." All right, it's like it start talking yourself up and really becoming the person that you want to be, and talking until you believe that. So that way, no matter what's being said out there, no matter who comes to you first thing in the morning or late at night, no matter what comes towards you, you're able to almost like combat that with your own words and your own feelings and emotions. And that's really where I come from. So I came from a place of insecurity. I found those things have really influenced the books, whether it be from this feeling that I should live up to this societal norm, which is the message in Crow from the Shadow, or you actually have somebody, a bully, who's telling you that, oh, well, you're not special because they're jealous and all these kind of things, which you see in Billy Dipper's Time to Shine. Really, it's just telling young people through my own story that you can be whatever you want to be, no matter what people say.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And I love what you said about the positive affirmations and starting your day that way, especially because I need the reminder again in this season. I know my affirmation is you are a I am a brilliant, beautiful, loving woman of God who makes other people's dreams come true. And I it makes me happy when I say that. And when I'm faced with a bully, because it happens a lot in business, you deal with a bully in a different type of way. And it usually comes in the form of an email because most people don't have the nerve to say whatever they want to say to my face because they
Hmm.
know what they're going to get at them. So they're going to hide behind an email. I have to recite that to myself and like to emotionally write, like, because it reminds me of who I am and what my values are, right? So I think knowing who you are and what value you're bringing in every moment of every day is so important, and to start your day with that affirmation, again, it's something that I haven't done in the last few months, so I appreciate the reminder. On the note of tiny habits, or we'll say atomic habits, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book. I wouldn't be surprised if you were. Yeah, I could tell you are. um are there any tiny, right? So just like, I mind you, my little affirmation, which is a little bit longer than what I said, but that affirmation took me 6 months to come up with. Like, it wasn't something that came up overnight. It took me a while to hone it and really go, okay, this is it. I'm a brilliant, beautiful, loving woman of God. And that took me a while to go, okay, that fits right. That feels right. Um, and so while it's a tiny habit, it took a lot of work to get me there and to the point where I can recite it. Are there any tiny habits that you can offer to the eavesdroppers to help them remember how to build strategies of success? Like, do you have anything that that either you do or you try to do because you know that it really makes a difference in your world besides the affirmations?
Absolutely. So I'll try my best to do the positive thing towards my goal at the same time for the same amount of time every single day. And I know a lot of people have schedules. Sometimes the schedule are in flux and they sort of change from day to day. But I've always recommended you just lay out your schedule, write it down for about a week. Don't do anything. Just write down what you're doing, whether it be your emotions, whether it be what time you wake up, what time you go to sleep, what you eat, all those things. Just journal it for about a week. Then after you do that, go back to your journal and start identifying at least 10 minutes. Now, hopefully somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes. That's uninterrupted time. And then what I like to do, what I started doing is I find those 10 minutes or 10 to 30 minutes to start placing little micro goals in there to say, okay, in order for me to eat better, I'm going to make sure that this time, every single day, I write down what my diet's going to be or my meals are going to be for the day. Or in order for me to read more, I'm going to sit down for 10 to 30 minutes every single day at this time, and I'm going to read this book. And I think really it's just having that set schedule sometimes really helps us out to start building momentum, because that really, I think that's where we start. If we, a lot of us can achieve a lot more towards our goals if we just had a set time to build that momentum and start that, what I believe is called snowball effect, to where you start off small and then slowly but surely you have those atomic habits. And yes, I do love that book, for the record. You have those atomic habits that really build into these great things to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I will say from a business perspective, one of the competitive edges that I bring to an organization, or where I really help the organization level up, is in my strategic planning. So what you're describing, right? Creating space to plan, that's exactly what I do when I approach either an organization that I'm working with or a leader who's just trying to get a better grip on their life. It comes down to the planning. I would argue that a lot of where that might come from for you, and I can definitely say for me, comes from the discipline that I got from my father scheduling with his militant Marine Corps background scheduling that I had to deal with and endure as a child, has now carried into how I approach my day. And I don't know if that was the influence for you with the Marine Corps.
It is, and that's the funny thing about it. That's another thing that the Marine Corps has contributed to my life. It's that structure. I was an operations officer really since I joined the Marine Corps. I filled that billet, and one thing that I'll tell you is that they constantly ask you, "Okay, so what's next? Okay, what's your plan to do X?" And the most successful people are the ones who can pull out their plan on a notebook and say, "Okay, from here to here, we're going to do this." And even if it changes, at least I had some structure, some plan to actually implement this plan so I can get towards my goal. So yeah, I 100% agree that that militant background or the military background really does help a lot.
Well, for the audience who can't see you, because I know I had said I can't imagine you being little, and then you mentioned being a little bit bigger as a child. I want to convey what I get to and look at here, respecting both your spouse and my amazing partner who I love. But you are physically very, very fit, and of course, again, you don't get to the Marine Corps without having extreme athletic capabilities and agility. And this kind of brings me into this SEFph philosophy, right? Because we know that having balance and success across a myriad of dimensions is so important. And again, looking at the military, the Marine Corps values that you mentioned, the three values, right? So honor, courage, and
Commitment.
oh my, how embarrassing! I messed up the good one. I'm very committed. I'm also honorable and courageous. Oh gosh, that's embarrassing. So, but with these different values, right? And looking at this philosophy that I created called the SEFph philosophy, and what it does is it's my way of doing an inventory as whatever I'm working on, whatever the path that I'm trying to build, whatever the goal that I'm trying to reach, right? I want to make sure that I'm creating a balance and I'm not too over invested in one area of my life. And so I created these four dimensions within the SEFph philosophy, and SEFph stands for spiritual, emotional, financial, and physical. And the idea is, while something I'm pursuing might not attribute to every single dimension, I want to be mindful if I'm over investing in one area and then perhaps neglecting another. And I always want to make sure that wherever area of success that I am pursuing at the time, spiritual, emotional, financial, or physical, is not coming at the detriment of one of the other dimensions. And so, what I want to ask you as we start to close this out is, as you look at this SEFph philosophy, is there an area where you feel the strongest? Because it seemed to me that you would be strong across the board, spiritually, emotionally, financially, and physically, just having spoken to you. Is there a place where you feel the strongest, but also is there a place where you're hoping to develop more?
Absolutely. So first of all, I absolutely love that. The two things that I would say I feel the strongest at are physically and financially. Those are the two that goes back to control. I can easily control those as long as I get enough sleep. I can wake up first thing in the morning. I can get in the gym. I can work out. I can eat well in the kitchen. I control all of that. If I invest well, then I can see a return on my investment. The two that usually suffer the most, especially the last one I'll mention, are spiritual and emotional. And really, I think for those of us who are in the industries of just giving to others and pouring into others, I think what happens is that we tend to develop more transactional relationships. Only because you're constantly pouring into somebody else, and I guess human nature is for somebody, or really nature in general, is if you're constantly giving to somebody else, then they are going to naturally come back to you with their hand out, waiting to be given to. And I think from there, you find yourself just pouring more and more into others. And if you're not careful, which I try my best every morning to wake up prior to going to the gym, I try to meditate, I try to read, I try to pray, and so on and so forth. But if you're not careful, what I think happens is you pour your so much out and you don't really replenish yourself, and you end up having that depletion of that emotional and sometimes spiritual that really reveals itself in those other categories, in the physical and the financial, because then you feel a little bit off kilter. And I think so. If I had to say there's an area that I have to grow in, I would say both spiritual and emotional. Those are the ones I have to focus more on, just because it's just trying to uh, allow people to pour into me, because I'm like you in that I don't like a bunch of people trying to speak into my life and give me advice. In fact, I'm one who said and then hang up if I feel like you're wasting too much. If you're wasting too much of my time, I don't have the time to give. But I do have to be more intentional about allowing people to pour back into my life and replenishing everything that I may have poured into everybody else throughout the day. Because I will go 90 to nothing, just trying to give to people and inspire people, and then come back and it's like, all right, you're starting to lash out, you're starting to get angry, and you're going back to your room, sort of trying to figure out what's wrong. Why are you so upset? That shouldn't have made you. Says, what does that make you upset? These are just your kids, or this is just a situation at work that's not even that hard to deal with. You've dealt with harder than that many times. And then I realized, oh, okay, yeah, I know what's happening. Like, you're emotionally drained right now, and you need to take some time to recover. So I think for me, that's sometimes I allow it to get to that point. I never allow my bank account to get to negative, because I can see the trends and I can go in there and make the adjustments. And I think we need to find a way to. I need to find a way to quantify that, or something to where I can track it a little bit better to know how my emotional state is doing.
Holy cow. You just unlocked something that I never considered before. You're right. With physical, to an extent, right? When we look at weight and just size, mass, volume, physical and financial have quantifiable metrics. And spiritual and emotional do not. They can't be measured on a scale. They can't be measured through numbers. And by the way, I'm a numbers person, so everything you're saying speaks to me. Although my physical is a hot mess these days. I almost said a bad word, but I know we got to keep this G rated for the children's book writer. So I think that, yeah, I mean, and maybe that's where I'm hyper aware of my physical limitations because of the metrics that I can visibly measure. I can no longer lift X amount of pounds. I can no longer run X amount of miles. I can no longer, I now have X amount more weight on the scale when I measure myself. And so because I'm able to create quantifiable metrics, wow, I'm going to have to really reflect on that because I never made that distinction between the four pillars. And it really does start to unlock these existential questions we've asked ourselves, like how much does a soul weigh? Some say 21 grams, and because that's how much weight we lose when we pass away. I think that when we start thinking about quantifying our spiritual and emotional selves, ooh, that's amazing. I'm so grateful that we met. You have blessed me with this awesome existential crisis that I'm now going to try to unlock, this puzzle that I'm going to try to work on. Like, how do I find a way to measure it? Because I think for me, it's just kind of been a gut check. And while a gut check is valid, it is super subjective and qualitative and anecdotal. And so I think that the fact that we aren't able to quantify it is a part of why wow, why we maybe overlook it, because we don't see the bank draining, the emotional bank, the spiritual bankruptcy is a lot harder to see. So I really appreciate that perspective. That was probably the best answer I've ever received on this podcast.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, when you figure that out, because I can give all those answers, but when you figure it out, can you please tell me so that way I can find a better way to measure it myself. That's really
Oh my gosh, yes. Then yeah, if I can measure a scale that measures your, that would be a Scientology, right? Scientology, you hold that scale and then they tell you what your soul is. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how accurate that is though, because again, if it's not verifiable and quantifiable, how do we make sure that there's some proof of concept? But as we close this out, I really, really, really want to thank you for one joining and sharing your expertise. I'm gonna make sure to link. Where is the best place that we can buy your book and books and view all the books and check it out? Like, is it your website or is it going to be Amazon? Like, what is your favorite outlet for someone to go in and buy your books?
absolutely. So my favorite outlet is Amazon.com, just because it's a lot easier to find them on Amazon. But for all
Well,
right.
now you triggered my abandonment issues. Thank you for that. You were in the middle of a beautiful speech, and I sat here waiting. Although you did show me something I didn't know, is that when you leave and come back, it makes a door knocking noise. Knock, knock, knock. It was really cute. I don't know if the eavesdroppers get to hear that, but I will definitely leave it there if they're to hear it. Um,
I'm sorry.
what happened? No, don't
I
be.
literally
Technical
have no
difficulties.
I have no idea what happened. Like it was just I was just talking and then you froze for a second, then it just dropped and I was like, "Oh, all right." So I just switched over to one of my hotspot. So I don't know if it was my internet just dropped or what happened, but anyway.
So the best place to find your books is going to be on Amazon. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes. And then for anybody who wants to reach out to you, because I know that we didn't get to talk about the real estate investing, although I'd love to talk about that. Maybe we'll have to bring you on next season because I'm closing out this season soon. But if somebody wants to reach out to you directly, I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. But is email best, website? Can you just go ahead and let us know where we can find you online again?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry about that. So you find me at parent-child-connect.com and you'll be able to look up, you'll see the contact me, you'll see all my books, my blog, all that kind of stuff will be on there. So please reach out. I love talking to people. I love chatting and getting to know more people.
Oh gosh, well, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for blessing me with your presence today. You genuinely put me in a better mood because I was in a funk. I've been in a funk today. I have been. So I feel a little bit brighter and I'm really, really grateful. And it's a testament as to why I do this podcast, because connecting with other people who can inspire and we can learn from each other. We all have different seasons, our ups and downs. And that's why we should all be in this together and just keep conversations going and flowing. And so thank you so very much for being here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening in to Eavesdrop with Ella. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, rate, or review Eavesdrop with Ella on your favorite podcast platform. While you're at it, you should also send this episode to a friend so we can connect with more eavesdroppers just like you. If you'd like to be a guest, you can visit ellaparlor.com to learn more. Until next time, this is Ella Parlor reminding you to stay resilient, stay abundant, and above all, stay balanced. Thank you for eavesdropping, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Eavesdrop with Ella, a production of EP Consulting. Some of the products and services mentioned are paid promotions, and any advice should be confirmed with a qualified professional. Opinions and ideas are for entertainment purposes only and belong to EP Consulting. All rights reserved.